Welcome to the Roy Morgan Weekly Update. Last week, many thrills as the Women's World Cup wrapped up. Congratulations to Spain on winning their first Women's World Cup. The big economic move of last week was the decline in the Australian dollar, which hit its lowest point this year. The falling Australian dollar driving petrol prices higher saw all the key indicators moving in the wrong direction last week, and support for the government dropped after a recent improvement. We also have the latest concerns from Australian farmers to share with you. But firstly, the latest Roy Morgan poll. It shows the ALP support is down 1.5% to 53% compared to the Coalition on 47% on a two-party preferred basis. Government confidence was also down 6.5 points to 76.5 this week. That's the lowest it's been since the Albanese government was elected. Now, a rising majority of 54.5% of Australians say the country's heading in the wrong direction. Only 31% say the country's going in the right direction. Consumer confidence this week was also down 2.4 points to 75.8, continuing the kind of up and down pattern of the last 5 weeks. Consumer confidence has averaged 76.5 since mid-July. There were declines across the index, including for views on personal finances and on people's outlook for the Australian economy going forward. ANZ Roy Morgan Consumer Confidence has now spent a record 25 weeks below the mark of 80, almost 6 months in recessionary risk territory. There was also worrying news in the inflation expectations data. Australians are now expecting annual inflation to be 5.5% over the next 2 years. That's up 0.3% on last week. The increases in inflation expectations were led by renters. They were up 0.7% and homeowners were up 0.6%, both now at their highest since July. Now, twice last year, when petrol prices surged to over $2 a litre, in the months leading up to both March 2022 and July 2022, inflation expectations surged soon after. So let's look at the pattern. From the end of 2021 until mid-March 2022, the average petrol price surged from $1.58 to a high of $2.13 per litre, an increase of 55 cents. During this same period, inflation expectations surged from 4.7% to 6.4%. This led the Morrison government to cut the fuel excise in half, and that reduced petrol price by about 25 cents per litre. And inflation expectations fell swiftly back to just over 5%, 5.1% in a month. Despite this, the price of petrol surged again between April and July, up by 46 cents, and it went to $2.12. During this period, inflation expectations surged from 5.1% back up to 6%. So petrol prices have now increased to $2.04 and are up over 30 cents per litre in the last month. They're now at the highest they've been for over a year since mid-2022. The increase in inflation expectations this week, up 0.3 percentage points to 5.5%, may be the start of a renewed surge in the measure if petrol prices continue to stay high and above that $2 per litre mark. The biggest factor, of course, driving petrol prices is the slump in the Australian dollar. The dollar's now dropped below 65 US cents, the lowest it's been since November 2022. When the Australian dollar's low, the price of imported goods like oil and petrol increases, and this obviously has a direct impact at the petrol pump. Not only does a falling Australian dollar drive petrol prices and inflation expectations higher, it also drives consumer confidence down and puts pressure on the Reserve Bank to increase interest rates. The Reserve Bank next meets in just 2 weeks' time for Governor Phil Lowe's final meeting in charge. And finally today, turning to Australian farmers and what they think. So Roy Morgan surveyed more than 1,000 Australian farmers in June and July to find out what, from their point of view, are the biggest challenges that they're currently facing. Farmers clearly identified economic conditions, including inflation, the falling Australian dollar, as well as falling commodity prices and rising costs of production and poor growth conditions, as the biggest challenge they face. These economic issues were mentioned by 49% of all the farmers we surveyed, and that's up from 35% a year ago, so it's a lot worse. As one farmer said, historically, farmers have always borne the brunt of price cutting or when the economy is faltering, because farmers are used by all levels of distribution through to retailers propping up their own profit lines. Other key challenges mentioned by farmers include the weather, staffing issues, government policy, rising interest rates, and business and financial viability. There was also a really stark result from Western Australian farmers. In contrast to all other states, the leading issue in the West was government policy, mentioned by 41% of Western Australian farmers. In particular, the Aboriginal Cultural Heritage Act, a state law which was recently repealed by the Western Australian government. It was widely mentioned by West Australian farmers. Further details on this survey are available via the Roy Morgan website. And that's a wrap for this week. Subscribe to our Roy Morgan YouTube channel. It's free for all the latest political, economic and market research data and insights. Thanks for listening today, and I look forward to bringing you the latest news from Roy Morgan next week. Take care, and we'll see you next Tuesday.